I see smiles in the audience, so I'm touching on kind of key spots. Masdar itself is a wholly owned subsidiary of a Mubadala company. The Mubadala company is a government-based investment vehicle. And the word investment is important. And being a 100% owned subsidiary of Mubadala, it means that Masdar is also a for-profit investment company. And it's important to understand that we're not some kind of charity. We in the renewable energy and sustainable development arena, but at the same time, we need to demonstrate to our shareholders that being in this business is also a profitable business. And that to me is a very interesting challenge, because we fully understand that to make this development and the ideas they have go viral, right, you'll never be able to achieve that by telling people that, yes, you can do great things, but you're going to lose money along the way. It doesn't work. Right? So when you tell somebody, we can do great things, we can do something good for the environment, and by the way, you can make a lot of money out of it as well, then you get people's attention. When you start talking to people as investors who you know deep down they're not really interested in the environment, but they're interested in making money, but they still want to engage with you, realizing they can make money, and by the way, they settle the conscience by we're doing something good for the environment. You know, somebody comes from the other direction, then that to me is a big win. Today we're all in here because you're all part of the conference, you're all listening to Ecocity's conference, because you're there already. You understand why you're here. You understand why we need to build in the green way. I don't need to convince you. Right. But at the end of the day, we are still, despite all the conferences, all the talks, we're still a minority. Right. And when I look at buildings being built, we talk about green buildings. How many buildings going up every day? Thousands. Of that, how many percentage claim to be green? I don't know, maybe 90%. How many buildings actually are green? Maybe 5%. That's a reality. Of those 5%, how many actually achieve their targets? Maybe another half of that 5%. And we get right down the bottom, I'm just speaking hypothetically now, that probably only about 1% of new buildings are actually making any kind of impact. And then I'm saying that we have a great building, Siemens building, uses 65% less energy than a typical building in Abu Dhabi. Then there's someone else telling me that, oh, by the way, we need to have 80% emissions reductions by 2050 based on 2010 baseline. So my 65% energy saving building is still way off the mark. And that's only 1 in 1,000. So when you look at it in that context, the challenges are clearly very, very big. And therefore, we keep going back to Masdar, we keep going back to the economic model, and that makes us, the most common question that I get, that I receive over the last 5 years is, what's the cost of all this? What is the premium of sustainability? So, when it comes to headlines of what we're trying to do, there's no surprises. We do want to improve quality of life. We do want to build a community. We want to do something about the impact on the environmental footprint. And very important, we have to demonstrate that we can be commercially viable. And it's a balance of these three. We call it optimization of all these three. When I say Siemens building is saving 65% energy, someone's going to ask me, well, why isn't it 70 or 75? Or why did you reach 65? Why did you settle for 50? And the answer is, because that number is the number where we can be economically sustainable and having a visible impact. Balance. Just some fast facts. The area of Masdar City, the land itself is 6 square kilometers. But what's interesting here is the fact that we're not a science park, we're not a clean tech cluster. We are aiming to build a full mixed-use community, and you can see from this that the largest component is residential. And that's the same for any fully functioning city. Actually, the residential component is the largest because it's only a small component of people in residential are actually working. When you've got a family of 4, 5, or 6, there's only probably 1 or 2 people actually working. And that work is supported by the industry and commercial. The takeaway messages here is a concentrated of mixed use. You know, once upon a time, everyone lived above their shops because transportation was not easy. And then technology and transportation came along, and everyone, suburbia happened. And planning went into zonal planning. You get a residential zone, you get an industrial zone, you get a central business district, zone. It meant that the zone worked because people can rely on efficient transportation. And now people are trying to work out how to make transportation more efficient, right, while having more energy efficient cars, right, or going to electric cars. Well, before we get to that level, what we're trying to do is get back to the original when people were living very close to where they work. And at Masdar City, one of the core principles about mixed development is that we want to give people the choice that if you want to live within walking distance from where you work, you can do that. Now, we're not going to force people to do that. Fortunately, we live in a free world. But we have the choice to do that because not everyone wants to drive half an hour to work. One of my previous jobs was headquartered in California before I came to Africa 10 years ago. And I was talking to the people there, and it was a common practice that people were driving, commuting to work on a 3-hour drive. They left at 4 a.m. in the morning and got to work at 7 a.m. And they couldn't leave at 5 a.m. because if they left at 5 a.m. they get caught in the congestion and they won't get to the office until 9 a.m. Crazy. And tens of thousands of people are doing that. And so getting back to basics is one of the things that we look at. We have to have, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to have indicators because we need to report, we need to do benchmark and tell people how well or not well we are doing. These numbers up there is probably a kind of summary of where we are at the moment. Right? And as I explained earlier, if we in the energy demand, we have a minimum baseline of 40% reduction. And by the way, in terms of energy and water demand, we are talking about minimum, and we encourage people that work with us to exceed these baselines. But it comes back to this point. These are the numbers that we believe we can achieve through good collaboration and also fulfilling a quality of life brief, but to be economically viable at the same time. Beginning with the master plan, a lot of effort has been put into President studies or studying in the past. You know, some of the older cities, they had thousands of years with trial and error to get it right. And there's a reason why buildings in these regions, the older buildings, have big heavy walls and small windows. And then you ask an architect today, well, why did you do an all-glass building in Abu Dhabi? That turns into a greenhouse. That takes an incredible amount of air conditioning to keep cool. And you could then achieve it because on the west side, on the full height glass, no matter how much air conditioning you put in there, the radiation is going to fry you. So you put the blinds down. Then you lost the view of the full height glass window, and then you wonder why the glass is up there in the first place. And then the architect tell you, well, we did one of these in Germany or UK or somewhere. Okay, and it says people just forget and rely on technology that being regional, being local, or being locally relevant seem to have disappeared in modern architecture. So this is a little picture of the Siemens headquarters building, but this is just some key areas that we delve into. And when you see the word, the only word that appears on there twice, but it can actually appear on all of them, is the word efficient. Efficient this, efficient that, efficient that. And somehow people think that, well, when you're efficient, you're heading into a machine age, and it takes away the humanism out of it. But what we found when we studied past history, the buildings that were built in the past were also very efficient in the way they acted, given the resources that they had. And because resource was scarce, so through trial and error, they produced very efficient building. What we're trying to do here is efficient building in a modern medium. We concentrate a lot about material selection. We have our own concrete batch plant on site that uses waste product to replace some of the cement to get the carbon emissions down. Steel, they're locally available recycled steel. And aluminium is a very interesting one. And the story behind aluminium is that when we started building Masdar City, we said, well, aluminium is very energy intensive to produce. So we put aluminium on a restricted materials list. So we want to avoid aluminium, it takes too much energy, because we're trying to measure the carbon emissions from all materials. When we did this, right, for some reason, the aluminium suppliers got a little bit upset with us. Because we say we're building a city of the future, but you're not on our list. And they said, well, you're going to close us down if you succeed. So what can we do about it? I said, well, there are other people in other areas in the world who are already producing recycled aluminium. And through a series of discussion, you can now get recycled aluminium in Abu Dhabi, and you can get up to about 90% recycled content in sheets and 80% recycled content in extrusions. And I use this story to tell developers, because products are available in the market because there's an owner somewhere or owner representative who start asking for this stuff and start making kind of threats in the name of the environment. And so market pressures and working with supply chain is also another set of experience we had here over the last several years. Collecting information. No point claiming that we can save 50% energy and then the end users do something completely different. So the reality is that we found that very often, and I think Masdar has an advantage over other developers here, very often we beat our figures, because the tenants that tend to come to Masdar tend to be energy conscious tenants. They're here for a reason. So I would say that our data collected is not a fair representation. What we really want is people who don't care or don't understand, but still using a building as business as usual, and then you see what happens. Right? So I'll make this kind of disclosure that we are getting very, very good performance figures, but there are psychological reasons why that might be. So we'll be interested in other people doing similar to what we're doing, but having a different tenant base.
Is your data real time?
We have real-time data, and we are revamping the system at the moment. We're going to put a new system in, and the idea of the new system, at any time I can take my laptop and I can see what's happening to the building. And it's actually very, very difficult to do. We are told conceptually that it's very, very simple. You just put in a few smart meters, throw in a few wires, and it's done. But when you have a city and you have multiple tenants, right, and you get tenants moving in and out, and the back to regulations again, The regulations here forces us to determine the number of tenants we have in the building before we design it, or before we build it. How do we know? We don't. That's a flexibility that's very, very difficult to work with, and it's just one of a million different examples of challenges we have to make this kind of thing work. Okay, so this one is collected, I think, on a weekly basis, but we're moving towards live. Building knowledge. Right. Masdar is part of an overriding process in Abu Dhabi to promote a knowledge-based economy. Right. So here it just has a diagram showing a lot of interconnected pieces, and knowledge building is a fundamental driver, and it's the reason why people like Schneider and Siemens and GE are attracted to us, because they want to participate in this knowledge. People like Siemens, they are one of the people who fund some of the research. Just like at MIT, a lot of research that's going on at the university is for the industry, they're not theoretical research. And we are doing a similar thing here. There's one very interesting project going on where a sponsorship from Etihad and Boeing, they were working with the institute, the city gave them a piece of land, and they identified a plant that grows in hypersaline soil, because the water below the ground here is hypersaline. It's 5 times saltier than seawater, because of the geography of this place. It's actually saltier than the water in the Dead Sea, if everyone's been swimming in the Dead Sea, so that's seriously salty. But there are plants that grow in that condition. But this particular plant is a potential to be converted into biofuel, since Etihad and Boeing are interested. And that's linked to the Masdar Institute doing the research. There's another research that's sponsored by the Department of Energy from the US of working on different coatings for PV panels. We have non-stick frying pans, someone's trying to make a non-stick PV panel so that when the dust hits it, it just rolls off. And this is the IRENA headquarters building. We are the home of IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. They moved in earlier this year. This is a summary of the performance of the building. I want to reiterate that these numbers is a balance against an economic model. I think it's probably safe to say that unlike many building projects where you start off with this beautiful concept on a beautiful rendering, our building starts off as an Excel sheet with numbers and returns on investment. And those things are cast in stone on day one, and the design evolves around that. So that's the end of my presentation. I just want to give a little bit of background, because in this context, when we go out and have a walk, hopefully it will make more sense on what we see. Okay, and now we can get out.